I'm Nick Mancuso. In this episode of Mysterious Forces Beyond, Magic and the Paranormal.
The areas of supernatural really happen in the eye and the mind of the beholder.
I have tried spells and incantations. No good.
He's skeptical of everything, but accept the possibility of anything.
For some reason, strange things happen whenever I'm around.
We're all looking for the real magic.
Magic may be the oldest of the theatrical arts. In medieval Europe, magic was a carefully guarded secret of wizards and priests, used to foster a belief in their supernatural powers. Yet for most modern magicians, magic is nothing more than the skillful tricks of the trade. But is magic simply sleight of hand? Or do magicians sometimes exhibit truly magical powers? There's a fine line between the world of magic and the realm of the paranormal. And while many magicians claim their craft is merely illusion, others believe that at times, magic gives way to the supernatural.
This is the world-famous Magic Castle in Los Angeles, performance space and social club for some of the greatest magicians in the world. Several of them gathered to discuss the line between magic and the paranormal.
I believe that there is another world and that we constantly cross over into it. It may not necessarily be paranormal because I think it's a natural event. Now, what can happen is when you're in the character of being a magician or a quote-unquote mind reader or a psychic, you get this crossover where suddenly you're not in character anymore and something real happens.
I think that the one side we're on is all that we're going to experience. I do not believe that there is transportation from one side to the other, if you mean that side being death and non-death.
I don't believe in the other side as it's defined in most of the philosophical or theological or parapsychological constructs that I've come across. I think there's more out there than I personally understand.
And just simply
The amazing Randy is both a professional magician and a leading skeptic of paranormal phenomena.
Since there's absolutely no good evidence that psychic or paranormal powers of any kind exist anywhere in the world, I would hardly be likely to believe that magicians have those powers. Now, mind you, I know some magicians like to fancy themselves in their private lives as wizards of a different nature altogether. They think they can do black magic or real magic, if you will. I think that they live a rich fantasy life.
The kind of magic that I do is quite different from paranormal because everything that we do, we magicians, is done without the use of extracurricular activity, if you will.
I think perhaps an argument could be made that since magicians are obviously interested in mystery, it might be more likely to find people with supernatural skills among magicians than among other professions.
We believe because we want to as an audience. So the magic and the areas of supernatural really happen in the eye and the mind of the beholder.
So let me explain this magic, illusions, and tricks. And let me illustrate it for you with this white handkerchief, which you notice I push into the top of my hand like this. And when I pull it out of the bottom, you see it's changed color. It goes in white and comes out red. You probably would have noticed that anyway, even if I hadn't called it to your attention. But this is an illusion that the handkerchief is changing color, see? It's an illusion, but there is a trick to it. And I'm going to explain what the trick is. And in order to do this, you have to have, you see, two handkerchiefs, huh? One red and one white. That's all there is to it. Most magic tricks are quite simple when you know the secret.
Magic is a word that's badly used in Canada and the United States. Magic really means to control nature by means of spells and incantations, and I can tell you I have tried spells and incantations. No good. Doesn't work. You got to use trickery.
Some magicians, however, are open to paranormal possibilities.
There's much more to it than just tricks. There are basically two different kinds of magic. There are the tricks, the rabbit out of the hat, and then there's the whole other world of the unknown, which we know nothing about.
I use psychological and intuitive means to simulate mind reading. There are times that the things that I'm able to draw out of a person through nonverbal communication skills and such are not only enough to convince the audience that there's something decidedly strange going on, but enough to convince me.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had some tangible proof of another life, of another side, of ability to do things beyond what we can do now?
For the next few moments, I'd like you to concentrate all of your psychic energy, which I know you brought with you tonight.
In this demonstration, Mark Edwards displays what appear to be paranormal powers of extrasensory perception.
We're going to use this pad of paper and one of your thoughts. So you're out in space, you're watching the world turn around, and you're focusing on that one place. Have you got it in mind? Okay, I want you to concentrate on it, and I will try and get it.
While the subject concentrates on a location, through seeming powers of extrasensory perception, Edwards writes the location on a sheet of paper. But is this actually ESP in action?
Fold this up. And while it's fresh in your mind, what is the place you were thinking of?
Thailand.
I can't believe it.
Has he actually guessed the correct location in the subject's mind?
If you would, sir, reach into the globe.
A third party is asked to reveal the location that Edwards has written down.
Bangkok.
So, oh no, please, I am only a tool, an instrument of these unforeseen powers.
I'm not convinced there is a line between magic of the theatrical kind and magic of the real kind. To whatever extent the real kind may or may not exist, it's a continuum. There's a gray area. Now, how gray it gets and how far it goes, that's not for me to say.
There has always been a special relationship between magic and the paranormal, between magicians and mentalists and mediums. What is the nature of this relationship? Why do some magicians express a belief in the supernatural, while others become passionate skeptics and debunkers? At what point do we cross the borderline between magic and the paranormal? Other people may be easily tricked, but magicians are not fooled by illusions. For this reason, magicians are uniquely suited to the exploration of paranormal phenomena.
One legendary magician who studied the paranormal was Harry Houdini, considered by many the greatest magician of them all. Though he never claimed it himself, others said Houdini had paranormal powers.
Houdini did believe that he was supernatural. You should read his press clippings. He believed that he was the most supernatural performer ever to tread the boards.
He went out on stage and said, hey, I can do things that are absolutely impossible, but then he did them. And that's what made him the great Houdini. Many magicians live under this big, dark shadow. They're always compared to Houdini. The magician did a Houdini. The escape artist did a Houdini by breaking out of the jail. And we have to acknowledge that fact.
I once asked my dad, who knew Houdini rather well, what kind of a magician was Houdini? Because his reputation as an escape artist was second to none. But as a magician, my dad said he couldn't put his hands in Central Park without rustling the leaves.
Henry Mueller is owner and curator of the Houdini Museum in Niagara Falls, New York.
Houdini was good at everything. That's why he stayed where he was for so many years. He started out in the late 1800s, early 1900s, turn of the century, and kept going till his death in 1926.
My grandmother saw Harry Houdini walk through a brick wall. And as I read more magic books, I started to say, Grandma, you know, it's a trick. She said, no, it was not a trick. He dematerialized.
Houdini became known as the man who could walk through brick walls. The use of a trap door cleverly hidden under a carpet on the stage allowed Houdini to seemingly start on one side of the solid wall and then appear to materialize on the other side.
Though I never saw him perform, people who did and who have commented said, first of all, he had a terrific personality that at the end of his great heroic efforts to escape from whatever he was doing, he would break into the most wonderful, warming smile.
The concept that Houdini used paranormal powers to do his magic would be laughable to Houdini.
Houdini always denied that anything he did had anything to do with the supernatural. He said it was done by perfectly ordinary means.
But Houdini was able to convince audiences that what he was doing might be more than mere illusion.
Houdini had a great way of acquiring a handcuff collection. He would go into some police department in the city and say, if I can get out of your handcuffs, I own them. And of course, they would always say yes, and he would always walk out with their handcuffs.
It's right here that Houdini did one of his most famous stunts for a motion picture. I believe that motion picture was The Man from Beyond. And believe it or not, that was really him in the water at the rapids, taking a chance with his life. He didn't take many chances. That was one time that he really did.
He took chances only to the point where it would endanger the success of it. He always had an out. And I think that almost any of the things that he did in the town other than the one you were in were the greatest things that were ever done. And to quote Houdini, you should have seen what I did last week.
Houdini would be handcuffed, manacled, placed inside the wooden trunk, and it would be locked with ropes and locks from the outside. Then Houdini would be lowered into the river with a crane and go completely underwater. And then we have here an underwater shot, the first underwater shot ever shot, where Houdini gets out, but of course at the opposite end so you can't see, and he swims around and comes up and they bring him out.
One of the most profound events in Houdini's life was the death of his mother. He would spend his last years trying to contact her on the other side.
When she died, I think it would be a natural thing for him to at least consider investigating whether or not someone could bring word back from the other side from his mother.
And so he started going around to spiritualists, trying to find someone to make contact. And what he found in these various spiritualist seances that he attended were fraudulent enterprises that he was able to identify as such and duplicate.
Can this person really bring back someone from the dead? Can he really make a trumpet float in the air, writing on a slate? He found, when he investigated, no, they were all frauds, and it made him very unhappy. I think that Houdini got into the debunking of mediums for two reasons. I think the first reason was that he wanted people to know that they were being defrauded. The second thing was, I think he found when he started doing that, it was a great way to get publicity.
If you want Houdini's take on the supernatural, the best thing to do is to consult Houdini. This is a book he wrote in 1924 called A Magician Among the Spirits. And in the preface, he kind of sums up his attitude toward all this stuff, which is as follows. He says, "Gladly would I embrace spiritualism if it could prove its claims, but I am not willing to be deluded by the fraudulent impositions of so-called psychics, or accept as sacred reality any of the evidence that has been placed before me thus far."
What is this mysterious netherworld we call the supernatural? This world of spirits and spells and messages from beyond the grave. Does it truly exist? Or does the possibility exist only in our imaginations? Even the great Houdini, the most prominent paranormal skeptic of his time, spent the last years of his life searching for answers, consulting with psychics who might serve as links to the other side. What he found was a series of frauds and con artists whose spiritual trickery he easily exposed. Nevertheless, Houdini vowed that after his own death, he would make every effort to communicate with the living. The eternal bonds of death would be a final challenge for history's greatest escape artist.
Being the escapologist he was, he figured that if anybody could come back after death, it would be he. But so that you couldn't wake up tomorrow morning and say, Houdini came back to me in my dream last night, he took a letter from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, put the letter into an envelope, and sealed it in 1926. Houdini circled 10 words in that letter, and then made a code which I carry with me in my pocket. This code and the 10 words together make up the secret message which Houdini will bring back, if he comes back.
For 10 years following his death on Halloween in 1926, Houdini's wife Beatrice ran a seance every Halloween. And the last one, when nothing happened, they announced they were done. They would never do it again. And at that moment, on the roof of a hotel here in Hollywood, the story goes, it rained. Years later, about 15 years ago, I thought it would be interesting to try a seance of my own, and I did an outdoor seance nearby that same location. And it didn't rain, but during the hour of the seance, we had about 20 minutes where a very heavy, wet mist descended on the seance table, which I thought was kind of strange, and I had no specific explanation for it. It was a dry night. The next night, I ran into Patrick Culleton, a Houdini expert, and mentioned to him that I didn't get rain, but I got this mist. He turned white and informed me that although there was no way that I would have known, the story about the rain was hype and embellishment. And in fact, what had happened on that rooftop in the 30s was a mist that descended.
In the seance in 1931-32 that my dad held at the Biltmore Hotel right here in Los Angeles, he got together, and one of the newsmen said, well, what are you going to do if Houdini shows up? My dad said, there's going to be a new door in the building where I go out through the wall.
I decided 4 or 5 years ago I was not going to have any part of that, because I really believe at this point that it's disrespect for Harry Houdini. He died in 1926. Let's let him rest in peace.
But some refuse to let Houdini rest. To this day, people still gather to summon his spirit.
The purpose of the Houdini seance is to entertain the audience. Now, if along the way some interesting things happen to come through for me and for you, then that's my goal.
One of the participants invited to attend tonight's seance is Houdini Museum curator Henry Mueller.
I'm the skeptic at the table, and I really don't think anything will happen tonight, but you never can tell.
See, there's two aspects to a magic show. There's the purposeful performance of the magician, and there's a suspension of belief on the part of the audience. Most of the illusion takes place in the mind of the audience.
I think we're ready to douse the lights. If we could remove the lights, please, except for the candle.
In the candlelight, the seance begins.
We have now formed the psychic circle.
Edwards
going to
appears
act
to
as
channel
our
the spirit of Houdini's
link
late
to the
wife,
other
Beatrice.
side. Beatrice Houdini, are you with us tonight? I am with you tonight. Do you wish a sign? Yes, Beatrice, give us a sign. Blow out the candle.
Now in total darkness,
Harry,
he calls upon
are
the
you with us
spirit of
tonight?
Harry Houdini.
Harry, are you there? Can you give us a sign, Harry?
As if in
With the
reply,
slate?
strange sounds are
Or
heard.
the handcuffs, Harry?
But are these truly sounds from beyond the grave? Minutes later, when the lights come back on, Edwards is apparently exhausted.
Yes. You may break the psychic circle. Well,
So what's the opinion of our
Rosebuds.
Houdini expert?
what do you think? Did we get any that you know about, sir?
I think it was a very well done seance, but I don't think Houdini came back.
When you call in spirits, let me tell you something. You gotta call them and know what you're calling them for. And when they come, you got to have something to say to them.
No, I didn't feel anything. Our spirits are concerned. I mean, everything happened in the dark, and I was skeptical as to where he was and what he was doing.
I truthfully believe he's telepathic. I have seen other people with telepathy. And I don't think that was tricks, what he was doing with the writing and stuff. I've seen other men in action, people in action.
Although neither Harry Houdini nor his wife Beatrice paid a visit, Edwards does not believe that this seance was a failure.
I think the seance was typical in many respects in that you cannot force these things to happen. They will happen when they want to, and the best plans, no matter how carefully you set it up, do not always give results. So as far as an entertainment, I think it was very successful, but as far as actually linking up with something on the other side, Harry is famous for being elusive.
He may very well, during the seance, have some sort of supernatural experience, but I suspect that it may be more valuable as a publicity ploy, and I rather doubt, seriously, that Mr. Edwards means that the way you've taken it.
I've had people touched by invisible hands that I know were not in the room. I've had cold chills come into the room, and I know there is no way for that to happen because there are no windows in the room. But like I said, I go back in the dressing room and I try and figure out what happened. And many times I cannot figure it out. And I think to myself, maybe there's a message that's going to come through when I add up all these things. But I haven't gotten to the point where I can give you a conclusive evidence. Let's just say that's the fun of it for me.
We are watching and waiting, Harry. Levitate the table, move it. Lift the table, move it, rap on it. Spell out a code, Harry, please. Do it, Harry, please. Mrs. Houdini, the 0 hour has passed. Have you reached a decision?
Yes. Houdini did not come through. The Houdini shrine has burned for 10 years. I now reverently turn out the light. Good night, Harry.
As of this date, Harry Houdini has yet to make his escape from the great beyond. But today, magicians still ply their secret trade along the narrow corridor between reality and illusion, between the possible and the impossible, between the normal world and the realm of the paranormal. Next time, journey with us to the border of the known and the unknown on Mysterious Forces Beyond.